The silence came long before the headlines stopped. In the dim aftermath of a career that once burned impossibly bright, Debra Winger vanished. Not in scandal, not in death, but in something far more unsettling: deliberate absence. At the height of Hollywood's obsession with her face, her fire, her unyielding presence, she chose to step away from the very machine that crowned her. But what force is powerful enough to make a star walk into the shadows while the world is still begging for light? This is not the story of a simple retreat. It is a story of fractures, of a young woman shaped by early trauma, sharpened by ambition, and slowly eroded by an industry that admired her talent but resisted her truth. Behind the acclaim, behind the Oscar nominations and iconic performances, something was quietly breaking. Each success came with a cost. Each role demanded a piece of her soul. What actually happened to Debra Winger? Was she pushed out, burned out, or did she walk away to save herself? And what price does a woman pay when she refuses to be anything less than the applause still echoes, even after the lights have dimmed? It lingers in empty theaters where the velvet seats remember her presence better than the industry does. On screen, Debra Winger remains frozen in moments of raw intensity, eyes burning with truth, posture taut with restrained defiance. Yet off-screen, something far more unsettling has occurred. She is gone. Not announced. Not explained. Simply absent. Award seasons come and go like ritualistic ceremonies, predictable and polished. Names are called, statues lifted, applause measured. Her name is never spoken. The camera never searches for her face. It is as if an unspoken agreement has settled over the room, a collective decision to move forward without acknowledging what is missing. But absence has weight, and hers presses heavily against the silence. In quiet living rooms, reruns flicker across late-night television. Viewers pause, recognizing her immediately, struck by a familiar ache they cannot quite name. She had been everywhere once, commanding scenes, stealing frames, refusing to soften herself for comfort. Now she exists only in echoes. The shock is not that she stopped acting. It is that she stopped being allowed to exist loudly. Psychologically, the contradiction is brutal. Success surrounds her image like a shrine, yet alienation defines her reality. She was celebrated for her authenticity, then punished for refusing to dilute it. Admired for her strength, then labeled for it. The word difficult begins to circulate quietly at first, whispered in hallways, passed along through closed-door meetings. It carries a sharp edge, one rarely applied to men with the same fire. It is not a description. It is a warning. Behind the silence is erosion. Years of negotiating respect. Years of defending creative integrity. Years of being told, explicitly and implicitly, that her value came with conditions. Each role demanded emotional exposure, yet the environment offered little protection in return. The cost accumulates invisibly, like cracks beneath polished marble. From the outside, everything looks intact. Inside, something is fracturing. The spaces grow quieter. Fewer phone calls, fewer scripts. The noise of fame fades, replaced by a hollow stillness that forces confrontation. Without the chaos of sets and schedules, the weight of everything unsaid rushes in. This is not retreat born of fear. It is withdrawal born of exhaustion. A mind and spirit worn thin by constant resistance. Her silence is misread as arrogance, as retreat, as disappearance. But silence can be a language of survival. In stepping back, she is not surrendering. She is responding to an environment that no longer allows her to breathe. Fame did not abandon her. Humanity did. The chapter closes not with resolution, but with a question that hangs unresolved in the dark. Was this disappearance an ending, or the quiet beginning of a reckoning no one in Hollywood was prepared to face? Long before the cameras found her, before the applause and the labels, Debra Winger learned what it meant to endure. Her childhood unfolded far from glamour, in an environment where emotional certainty was scarce and resilience was not encouraged. It was required. The world did not feel safe, and so she learned early to observe, to adapt, to stay alert to shifts in tone and silence. These instincts would later shape her performances, but first they shaped her survival. The defining rupture came suddenly, violently. A near-fatal accident shattered more than bone and flesh. It disrupted her sense of permanence. Recovery was slow, isolating, and deeply internal. While others her age moved forward untouched, she was forced into stillness, into pain, into reflection long before she had the language to process it. Trauma did not announce itself loudly. It settled in quietly, altering how she saw her body, her vulnerability, and her place in the world. In that isolation, imagination became refuge. Performance was not about attention, it was about control. On stage, in character, she could decide how pain was expressed, how emotion was shaped, how endings arrived. Acting offered structure where life had been chaotic. It gave her a voice that did not require explanation, only presence. Each role became a rehearsal for emotional truth, a way to externalize what could not yet be spoken. But survival comes with a cost. Strength, once learned, becomes armor. Vulnerability is rationed. Trust is conditional. Even as her talent sharpened, so did her independence. She learned to rely on herself because experience had taught her that reliance on others could disappear without warning. This self-containment would later be mistaken for defiance, but its roots were far more fragile. Psychologically, the foundation was already set. She would never be comfortable being molded. Authority was something to be questioned, not accepted blindly. Praise was met with caution. Attention, even when positive, carried the threat of withdrawal. These patterns followed her quietly into adulthood, into auditions, into rooms where power dynamics were unspoken but absolute. Foreshadowing lingers in the margins of this chapter. The same instincts that kept her alive would one day clash violently with an industry that demanded compliance masked as collaboration. The same resilience that carried her forward would later isolate her. The chapter ends with a young woman stepping toward opportunity, carrying ambition forged in adversity, unaware that the world she is about to enter will reopen wounds she never truly had the chance to heal. The ascent is swift, almost disorienting. One role leads to another, each performance sharpening her presence, each frame unable to contain the gravity she brings with her. Film sets buzz with movement, lights being adjusted, cameras rolling, voices overlapping. But when Debra Winger steps into a scene, the noise recedes. There is a stillness around her, a concentration that pulls everything inward. Directors notice. Audiences feel it. Critics struggle to name it, settling instead on words like intensity and truth. Success arrives not as celebration, but as expectation. She becomes a reliable force, someone who does not merely play emotions but inhabits them fully. Her characters breathe, hesitate, resist. They feel lived in. Yet the very qualities that elevate her work begin to isolate her behind the scenes. She asks questions others do not. She challenges motivations that feel hollow. She resists simplification. In rooms built on hierarchy, curiosity is often mistaken for rebellion. The environments grow more polished, more controlled. Trailers are larger. Sets are more expensive. But psychologically, the space feels smaller. Conversations stop when she enters. Compliments are paired with caveats. Admiration carries an edge. She is respected for her talent, yet quietly resented for refusing to disappear into obedience. There is an unspoken rule she keeps breaking. Gratitude should look like silence. Isolation does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates. Long days on set end in quiet hotel rooms. Applause fades quickly, replaced by a familiar emptiness. She watches colleagues perform versions of themselves that are palatable, strategic, protected. She cannot do the same. Every performance costs her something real, and the industry does not return the favor with safety or understanding. Psychologically, the conflict deepens. Her early survival instincts resurface, now triggered by subtle shifts in power. Meetings feel loaded. Praise feels conditional. She senses the growing distance between who she is and who she is expected to be. Each success tightens the pressure, turning visibility into vulnerability. To be seen this clearly is dangerous. Foreshadowing darkens the edges of her rise. Whispers circulate more openly now. The word difficult grows louder, no longer whispered but passed casually, as if it explains everything. It becomes a shortcut, a way to dismiss complexity without engagement. She feels the walls narrowing, though no one openly confronts her. Exclusion does not announce itself. It simply begins. Scenes blur together. Award ceremonies where her name is called. Applause swelling as she walks to the stage. Camera flashes freezing her smile in place. From the outside, she appears triumphant. From within, the loneliness is acute. There is no space to rest, no permission to be uncertain. Strength is expected at all times. The chapter closes at the peak of her career. She stands surrounded by recognition, her face illuminated by lights meant to honor her. Yet beneath the noise, beneath the celebration, a profound solitude settles in. The question is no longer whether she belongs at the top, but how long she can remain there without losing herself entirely. The shift is subtle at first, almost deniable. Doors still open, but not as wide. Meetings still happen, but the tone has changed. The warmth that once greeted Debra Winger cools into formality, then into something sharper, calculated distance. Hollywood does not announce rejection. It engineers it quietly, through omission, through hesitation, through the slow removal of opportunity. Power dynamics harden around her. Executives speak in softened language that conceals firm decisions already made elsewhere. Scripts arrive thinner, safer, stripped of the emotional complexity she once commanded. Roles that might have challenged her no longer find their way to her door. No explanation is given. None is needed. She understands the message because she has lived with its early signs for years. Psychologically, the toll deepens. The industry's resistance is no longer abstract. It is personal. She is framed not as an artist with conviction, but as a liability. Stories circulate without her presence to counter them. Media narratives flatten her into a caricature. Talented, yes, but troublesome. The label follows her into rooms she has not yet entered, shaping opinions before she ever speaks. It is a quiet form of erasure, one that leaves no visible bruises. Film sets, once places of purpose, now feel tense. Conversations are careful. Eye contact is fleeting. She senses that her presence disrupts the comfort of those in control. Integrity has made her unpredictable, and unpredictability is dangerous in a system built on control. The unspoken demand is clear. Soften, comply, disappear into gratitude. But to do so would require a betrayal she is unwilling to commit. Fear creeps in, not of failure, but of invisibility. Anger follows, sharper and more corrosive, aimed inward as much as outward. She questions herself in quiet moments. Was she wrong to push back? To demand more depth? To refuse roles that felt dishonest? The psychological conflict is relentless, self-respect warring with survival. Isolation intensifies. Allies thin out, some retreating for their own protection, others aligning themselves with safer narratives. The industry does not need to exile her publicly. Simply waits. Time becomes a weapon. Silence stretches. Each unanswered call reinforces the reality she has been avoiding. The emotional violence of exclusion cuts deeper than any public scandal could. There is no moment to defend herself, no clear accusation to refute. Only absence. Only the slow realization that the system she helped elevate no longer has room for her refusal to conform. Fame, once a shield, now exposes her completely. In private spaces, the weight becomes unbearable. The constant vigilance, the negotiations of identity, the emotional labor required to simply exist in these rooms. Everything demands a price. Exhaustion settles into her bones. The fire that once fueled her performances flickers, not from lack of passion, but from overuse. A decision looms, heavy and irreversible. She stands at a threshold few openly acknowledge but many quietly face. To stay would mean surrendering pieces of herself, reshaping her instincts into something smaller, quieter, acceptable. To leave would mean stepping into uncertainty, risking irrelevance, allowing the world to misinterpret her silence. The chapter ends in suspension, the moment stretched thin. She has not yet walked away, but the distance is already there. The question hangs unanswered, trembling with consequence. Will she bend to survive within the system, or will she choose disappearance over self-erasure? The departure does not arrive with drama. There is no press conference, no final bow, no carefully worded farewell. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, the way a person leaves a room once they realize the air has become unbreathable. Debra Winger steps away from the machinery of Hollywood not in triumph, but in preservation. What the world interprets as retreat is, in truth, an act of containment, an attempt to keep what remains of herself intact. At first, the silence is disorienting. Without the rhythm of production schedules and the constant demand for emotional output, time stretches unervingly wide. Identity, once reinforced by roles and recognition, begins to blur. There is fear here, real, unglamorous fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that the stories told about her will harden into truth simply because she is no longer present to challenge them. Fear that she has stepped off the edge of relevance into something colder. This is the deep darkness, the phase no spotlight reaches. The nights are long, the questions relentless. Who is she without the work that once defined her? What remains when applause no longer interrupts doubt? Psychologically, the unraveling is slow and uneven. Purpose does not immediately replace ambition. Healing does not announce itself. There are moments of regret, flashes of anger, grief for a version of life that might have been possible in a kinder system. And yet, within the quiet, something unfamiliar begins to form. Space. For the first time, her energy is not constantly extracted, negotiated, or judged. She becomes selective not out of pride, but out of necessity. Motherhood grounds her in a reality untouched by industry narratives, offering a form of presence that does not demand performance. The measure of success shifts, no longer external, no longer fragile. When she returns to work, it is on her terms. Smaller projects, deeper intentions, stories that resonate rather than impress. The fire is still there, but it burns differently now. Controlled, protected. She no longer needs to prove her depth to anyone. Survival has taught her the cost of constant resistance, and wisdom teaches her where to place her strength. Legacy in this final movement is reframed. It is not about volume or visibility. It is about integrity maintained under pressure, about the refusal to disappear internally, even when the world encourages silence. Her absence becomes a statement the industry never learned how to answer. The chapter closes not with resolution, but reflection. Debra Winger did not lose her career. She chose herself. Yet the question lingers, heavy and unresolved, extending beyond her alone. How many others were pushed to the same edge, and how many learned that silence was the only way to stay whole and real in a world built on illusion?